The idea that we're going to have an apocalypse from climate change is based on the idea that we can't adapt to a slight increase in temperature over the next 100 years. That is pure bullshit, and I'd like to show you how it is. The simplest way I can do it is break it down to the big three promoted but absolutely nonsense threats. One is sea level rise, 2 is weather extremes, hurricanes and floods, and 3 is weakened food production. Firstly, sea level rise is not a problem in any circumstance because all our housing and built infrastructure has to be largely replaced over 50 to 100 years regardless. So if you have to rebuild that factory, why not rebuild it on higher ground? It's easy, just go inland a little bit more. In theory, it will reduce your insurance bill, right? And then there's the fact that so much of our commercial infrastructure hardly needs to be built in the first place because over half of us already can work online. We don't even need those commercial buildings. And finally, in the very particular areas where sea level rise might be a problem, we can simply build a sea wall. This is not difficult at all. Building a wall to accommodate deep water is a big deal. That's a dam. That requires massive amounts of concrete and steel. But if it's just 1 meter, it's nothing, and you can do it in a mass production type way in the very particular areas where that might be necessary. So we're going to get an apocalypse from a sea level rise? Give me a break. We will not. And then there's the weather extreme problem, hurricanes and floods. Firstly, most of our cities today in the Western world and also in the more developing world are already built for weather extremes. We're going to get hurricanes and floods just like we always have done. Having more of them is not a problem once you're built for them. Apocalypse? No. But let's pretend that we're going to get an incredible number of hurricanes, like twice a year or something ridiculous like that. Can we accommodate that? Sure. For a start, and again remember we're replacing our housing stock whichever way you go, we can simply build our houses on stilts, flooding problem gone. And we can do that for other infrastructure as well that is particularly vulnerable to flooding on floodplains. And also, if you're getting a hurricane every 2 years, you can do as follows. Take this house on the ground. Put in some concrete anchors, maybe about 3 to 10, depending on the house you're building. Strap your house down. None of this is expensive. And get some of these things. Import them from China. Plastic, steel reinforced covers that clip straight onto the windows. What have you got? You've got a house that is a tank in a hurricane. It can probably even withstand a grade 2 or 3 tornado. You might have to save up 10,000-20,000 over the next 50 years to install it, but you'll get it all back again in reduced insurance costs. Apocalypse? Should we all be screaming? Should we be shutting down our energy production in coal and oil because of it? Give me a break. Again, all these alarmists all totally, completely underrate our ability to comfortably adapt to any climate change, be it man-made or natural. They are so full of crap. And then there's the other possibility, the other concern, and again I'm pretending that this climate change thing really is a problem, that is we really are going to get another 2 or 3 degrees temperature increase, and that is that a changing climate will somehow take a whole lot of land out of food production. Firstly, the opposite is happening. Higher carbon dioxide concentrations are greening the earth about another 20 to 30%. We've got more greenery because carbon dioxide is plant food. To cut a long story short, I'll just let you know that with higher concentrations of CO2, plants don't have to breathe as hard to get the CO2, which means they don't lose as much water, which means they can tolerate less water-rich environments. That's why we're getting so much greening. And it's very good for agrarian yields as well. Food. So far we're getting a reverse apocalypse on the level that could possibly count. Okay, about 30% of agriculture land is arable. I said that right. And the other is marginal. Basically, arable land is the stuff you can plough. and produce a high concentration of veggies and stock feed and stuff like that. Marginal land is where it's sort of only good for grazing animals, which is very low density, and scraggly plants in amongst a deserty sort of an atmosphere. Low yield but usable. Now if the worst happens and somehow we lose arable land, and again it appears we're getting the opposite of that, but if the worst does happen, then what we can do is turn a whole lot of marginal land, and even deserts, would you believe, into arable land if we can regulate the water. Okay, basically efficiently move a whole lot of water into the marginal land, developing it into arable land. So here's an efficient idea. Others could be better, but this is just one idea that I thought of to make an example of how we can adapt here. What I'm going to show you, what I'm going to build up in front of you, is a monorail water train. So the orange is the ground on the desert or wherever. And what do? We build a trench and put a simple concrete beam right through the ground with the black bits in there are a steel reinforcement. Cheap, easy. A tunnel boring machine type machine can do this automatically. It wouldn't, way more economical than a normal train track. Okay, and you'd have two side structural supports for electrical contact and to also stabilize the monorail. There's your main wheel, okay, your steel wheel, and your supporting wheels that go on the side rails, and that green part of it will be made of plastic, by the way. And then of course is your water container, and inside that is the water. That's dirt cheap way of transporting water extremely efficiently. It's like a moving pipe. It could travel at say 40 kilometers per hour with trains as long as 10 kilometers literally, segmented about 1 kilometer apart, so you can switch quite comfortably. That is, change lanes for the train, and it would have a very high capacity as well. Basically, it's extremely efficient to move because you're fighting against the viscosity of air rather than water. No ground seepage losses and no vaporization loss. Particularly good for getting water out into the desert. Now here's the thing. Even if you did a massive project all over the world that cost $1 trillion, $1 trillion over say 50 years, if it doubles agrarian output, is nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is the sort of thing we can do so easily if we really are fighting, like the alarmists want us to believe, some kind of apocalypse, as though we can't adapt to a changing climate. Humans, with their modern technology, are very, very powerful, very, very strong. It's going to take a whole lot more than a 1 or 2 degree temperature rise, which even if we do nothing, will probably be more beneficial than harmful. Honestly, reader, I could go on, but I'll probably start boring you to death if I talk about all the simple, straightforward adaptations we could and would make to a changing climate. Adaptations that we already do make to make ourselves more resilient to a naturally changing climate, I will add. Believe me, the climate is not going to wake up like a dirty, horrible monster and kill us all. We are so far removed from that kind of justification for alarmism, it's not funny. That was clear to me when the whole climate game started to really crank into gear 25 years ago, because I knew how easy it was for us to adapt. That's how I knew, and I'll speak bluntly, the whole thing was a complete load of politicized horse shit right from the beginning. Yeah, right, we can't adapt to a little change in weather. Humans survive no problem whatsoever from the tropics all the way to the Arctic. Hell, we can easily accommodate this. I just want to create some material examples to try and create some perspective. And before anyone tries to tell you that I'm an anti-environmentalist who says go back to sleep and I'm working for the oil companies who actually profit from climate alarmism. I won't go into that here. I'll tell you what our real problems are, the things we should be putting our energy into, as far as I can see at least. Number 1, ocean pollution from poor nations that don't contain their waste. Hell, I don't like that. Nuclear power plants being targeted by terrorists. Woohoo, that's a really big threat. Why aren't we talking about it? Population uncontrollably exploding as a result of greater real prosperity. That is a threat. The wholesale destruction of natural forests for food production. I don't like that. I firmly believe we need to have, a natural ecosystem, thriving and substantial. Political tyrannies developing that have no respect for human rights. Religious extremism, violent religious extremism, that is a real threat too. Islam, for example, is 1.8 billion strong, and they achieved that primarily by the sword. 1,400 years ago, and it's still alive and kicking. That's a threat. Corporate capture of government leading to poisonous foods and bad pharmaceuticals, etc. Yeah, that's common knowledge, that one. We already have that. That's a real problem. And the global pandemic of severe child abuse getting worse, not better, driving serious human pathology, etc. Now, these are real threats. These are real things to worry about, not this ridiculous demon of climate change, which will not be an apocalypse, even if we do get an extra 2 or 3 degrees warming. And there's another thing I'd like to add to this. In a free market economy, price signals tend to take care of problems whichever way you go. Insurance companies, to the very best of their ability, assess statistical risk. If you're going to build your house or whatnot in a high-risk zone, or your commercial building, whatever, that could be undermined by climate change, then you will pay an insurance premium to deal with that. That price signal of higher insurance costs will naturally drive climate resilience investment. So you hardly even have to make this political. The problem will literally take care of itself. Nothing drives societies more effectively and efficiently than price signals. Again, what are we afraid of? My conclusion is that we should focus primarily, if not overwhelmingly, on climate resilience as our investment rather than CO2 reduction, because the far-reaching costs of shutting down oil and gas are incredible and have been incredible, way beyond what we could ever expect to have to worry about in the future with climate mitigation. And finally, I want to make another point to show you how completely full of it the people behind this game really are, how much of a political movement it is. Now, if we really want to reduce CO2 emissions, if that's where we're at, okay, why then aren't we getting excited about geothermal energy? It's perfect. You dig super deep for super hot rocks that will cook your water and give you an ultra efficient steam engine, basically. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. That solves the world's energy problems if we can just dig down deep. We have new technology that allows us to do this. That's currently being developed. In short, microwave, vaporize the rock, go down super deep, allows you to go down super deep, getting at supercritical steam. Whammo, you can do it anywhere in the world. Your energy problems are solved almost immediately. Only the transport sector might need to burn a bit of oil. Why have you never heard of this technology? Why aren't the environmental extremists jumping up and down telling us to invest in it? The answer is because this game is not about reducing CO2 emissions. It's about using CO2 emissions as an excuse to drive forward the political architecture to achieve population stability, a one-world China. I suppose I can't say that as a fact, but every single screaming arrow points in that direction. And one thing I do know is that the apocalyptic scaremongering cannot be justified. That's something that I've always known, and that's why I know that this massive political movement, and make no mistake, the climate game is a massive global political movement, is completely full of shit with respect to its true objectives. I've looked at politics for a very long time, decades, and something that I've always casually said, all roads lead to population control. And one of the reasons why it appears that way, it appears that population control is really the greater game, is because it's not entirely irrational. We do have to have it. We cannot afford to go like the Amish and double our population every 20 years. The powers that be know that, and again, this is where I think they're really at. They need the excuse to install the political architecture to achieve global population stability akin to China. Thank you.